today. Dr. Stephen Frantz is part of the Global Environmental Options. He is a pathobiologist, author, consultant, and activist. Recently, he has shifted much attention to glyphosate, which is Roundup, the most widely used herbicide in the world that causes considerable morbidity and mortality, human and animal and environmental health. Last year's findings of glyphosate in the vaccine supply has underscored the need to eliminate all illness-related additives and contaminants from the vaccine supply and to globally ban glyphosate and related pesticides. GEO's central goal is management of environmental toxins and of unacceptable species direct and indirect contact with humans and domestic animals through sustainable, ecologically sound intervention strategies. Please welcome Dr. Stephen Frantz to the stage. Thank you so much.
I have to tell Brittany it's actually France. Just think of pronouncing the name of the country, France, in French. You got it.
I'm from the South, what do you say?
So I'm a research pathobiologist, and basically what that means is I'm concerned with disease systems, and basically I connect the dots regarding what makes us ill. So I want to thank Brittany and also Shannon for inviting me here. So does anyone out there know anyone with gut problems, leaky bowel syndrome, gluten intolerance? I see hands going up. Do you know what glyphosate is? Some people do. Okay. How many of us have a container or two of glyphosate back home? No, good. Actually, I keep running into people, cab drivers and so on. Oh, I got that stuff. I got to get rid of it. You know. So glyphosate was first patented as a chelating agent. That is, it was an agent to take minerals out of steam pipes and boilers. Then it was patented as an herbicide, a weed killer, and then it was patented most recently as an antibiotic. So it's really the primary ingredient in Roundup, the most widely used herbicide in the world that's used on food crops, non-food crops, and also other areas such as playgrounds. Isn't that great? Playgrounds, playing, ball fields, hiking trails, and so on. It kills nearly any plant life it comes in contact with, whether it's above, just in the ground or in water. They have versions to use anywhere, and it's sold everywhere. You can go in all the garden shops and so on. It's always going to be there. In the United States, more than 280 million pounds of glyphosate are used every year on more than 1 billion acres of crops. Now, if that doesn't frighten you, you're not listening carefully enough. 280 million pounds on more than 1 billion acres of crops. It contaminates everything. It's found everywhere. It's in the air, surface water, groundwater, rainfall, soil, dust, in plants, in us. And most people get exposed to it through contaminated food because our diet is contaminated. So consider for a moment, like I was on the airplane when I came in yesterday. They gave us these little biscuits to chew on, and it says no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives, non-GMO, vegan. Great. It's not organic though. It doesn't matter, it can be all the gluten-free, GMO-free you want, it's still got glyphosate and the pesticides in it. Organic is the key. In large-scale industrial farming, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, all these animals are fed genetically modified materials, which thus you end up with glyphosate in the milk, in the dairy, all the dairy, whether it's cheese, milk, eggs, meat. They're all contaminated. So in adding insult to injury, if crops are exposed to glyphosate, or they're GM crops, they've been found to be nutritionally inferior to conventionally produced crops and even more inferior to organic crops. That's just the science. So you, your children, your pets, all can be exposed to glyphosate when touching plants that have wet or freshly dried spray residue on it, It can be ingested in or on food. It's in contaminated water, for contaminated hands or clothing, inhalation, dermal absorption. It's also been found in tampons, in sterile cotton balls, in surgical gauze. And I like to use this example in surgical gauze. Say you have skin cancer, you go to your doctor and they excise the cancer, put some product on to heal you, and then they put sterile gauze on. Sterile gauze is contaminated with is glyphosate contaminated, which is a carcinogen. This doesn't make very much sense. That's because like 86% of the cotton is GMO cotton today. Also, our pets, our dogs and cats and so on, are exposed to residues in the commercial pet food. Glyphosate is present. Or also other sources, like say they run around in a lawn or a lawn area that's been treated, so then it gets on their bodies, they bring it into the house and get it on the furniture, onto you, so it's a translocation of it. So there's lots of ways of getting exposed. Well, in August 2016, we found it in vaccines. My colleagues at MIT found it in vaccines that contain animal byproducts such as gelatin or fetal bovine serum albumin and so on. This is because such animal-sourced ingredients come from animals that are fed GM crops and other glyphosate-contaminated crops. The glyphosate comes through. And by some of those same analyses that were done, some of your childhood favorites such as Jell-O and Disney gummy vitamins, all contaminated with glyphosate. It's incredible. Again, because they're all sourced, it's all animal-sourced gelatin. The animals are fed glyphosate-contaminated foods. So the pathological effects of glyphosate, the way it causes harm, is largely through its antibiotic activity and also a very unique kind of toxicity where when your cells are forming proteins and looking for glycine to form a protein, they mistakenly grab glyphosate. Glyphosate is an analog. It's a synthetic amino acid analog of glycine. And so now when those proteins are formed, the proteins are misshaped. When a protein is misshaped, its function changes. It changes radically. There's just no way of knowing. I mean, it's where it's going to go. I mean, Monsanto has said for years glyphosate is safe because it doesn't affect it doesn't affect the Shikimate pathway, the shikmate pathway. And it's true, animals, I mean humans and other animals don't have the Shikimate pathway, but our gut microbes, our whole gut microbiome depends on that pathway to keep us alive. So in a very technical way, Monsanto's right, but basically it's a bold-faced lie. But what do you expect?
Very, very happy.
So these two effects of glyphosate are disastrous for the microbes in the gut microbiome and also for the enzymes or structural proteins, neurotransmission, and so on. It causes medical chaos. Thus, glyphosate is an important factor in the development of multiple chronic diseases, including autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, inflammatory bowel disease, gluten sensitivity, obesity, cardiovascular disease, sleep disorders, all this or cancers, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and breast cancer, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and infertility. All of this is linked to glyphosate. It's amazing, and biochemically and medically it makes sense why this happens. In March 2015, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer declared that glyphosate caused cancer in humans. So in California recently, our EPA, I'm from California, from LA, proposed a safe hazard level for glyphosate of 1,100 micrograms glyphosate per kilogram body weight. This is virtually crazy because just think 1,100 micrograms they want, and it actually at 0.001 micrograms causes the proliferation of breast cancer cells in vitro. So it's like, hello. Anyway, I'm often bothered by standards anyway because, we have standards such as the European Union says you can have 0.5 milligrams of glyphosate per kilogram body weight for daily consumption. So the level proposed by the California EPA is already more than twice that. So both levels can't be can't be safe, they can't be acceptable. So I'm not sure where it's actually called WEHA, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, came up with a safe level of 1,100 micrograms. Now, it could be that they have magicians on their staff, or maybe they have proctologists. No one got that? Come on. There are a lot of problems with these kind of standards because they're really not based in rigorous scientific data. What I have seen is that as industrial agriculture applications of glyphosate have increased, so has the contamination level of our food supply, and in response, the U.S. authorities have periodically elevated the maximum allowable safe amount of glyphosate residues in what we eat. In essence, these are just pragmatic decisions based on really to accommodate the existing real-world residue levels of existing agricultural practices. It's not reliable science. It does not follow the precautionary principle. It doesn't make sense. Another issue about glyphosate is, I talked about its toxicity before, it's not dose dependent. In other words, typically in toxicity we talk about dose makes a poison. The more the dose, the more its effect. Glyphosate functions, it kicks in at a very low level. Same as hormone disruptors and so on. And remember, in the flyer, did anybody get the flyer? There's a flyer that shows that level of the concentration of glyphosate that causes breast cancer cells to proliferate. That level, 1 part per trillion, is the same if you put 1 drop of ink into a body of water that equals 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Seems pretty dilute, doesn't it? It causes breast cancer. So where do they come up with 1,100 micrograms, which is much higher level? Anyway, it also bioaccumulates in all tissues, bodily fluids, and every exposure adds another dose to the body burden. We calculated that at 1 part per billion concentration of glyphosate, that is a trillion, actually it's almost 4 trillion molecules of glyphosate. And every one of those molecules has the option, if you will, of altering a protein. Every protein that's altered means it's going to not function anymore. Hence all the diseases we mentioned earlier. So the other issue, since glyphosate circulates in our bodies for up to 2 weeks, you have it circulating for up to 2 weeks, you're continually consuming other foods if you're not eating all organic. It's bringing more glyphosate into your system. So we have to ask, how many exposures are likely to occur in a day, a week, a month? How large is each exposure? How could one possibly, if they want to have a safe haven level or safe harborage level, how could one possibly manage their intake with any degree of accuracy? It doesn't make sense. Well, I just should mention a couple of environmental effects of glyphosate, and that is that it disorients and kills honeybees, which are of course absolutely necessary in agriculture. It has decimated monarch butterfly populations, especially in the Midwest. It also destroys soil microbes, which normally would sequester carbon. So because it doesn't sequester carbon, it's free in the atmosphere, so it contributes to the climate crisis. I mean, any way you slice it, glyphosate is a horrible chemical. And there's been a long debate on how bad glyphosate is, but fortunately, friends of mine, Anthony Samsel and Stephanie Sneff at MIT, are publishing lots and lots of the secret data from Monsanto because they managed to get it through Anthony's New Hampshire senator. We have stuff nobody else has. They have stuff nobody else has that's being published. So through deceit, institutionalized greed, and so on, significant scientific data has been misrepresented, it's been masked, falsified, with regulatory and public approval, to win regulatory and public approval in order to bring glyphosate to market. So such collusion is now being investigated on many fronts. This is a great part of this. U.S. Congressman Ted Lieu, well actually I should say last year, almost to the day, I was here with a congressman who sponsored me to bring a group of scientists here to question the EPA and to give information to the U.S. congressional staff on glyphosate and how bad it was. And on March 15th of this year, he issued a press release that said consumers should immediately stop using Roundup because of the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma risk. That's pretty powerful coming from a U.S. congressman. Then he also, I called for this last year, but he actually called for it in writing for a Department of Justice investigation into various interactions, shall we say, between individuals of the USDA, the US EPA, the Department of Health and Human Services, and Monsanto. And that Department of Justice investigation was initiated on May 31st of this year. So that has just started. And then we also have other, because we just had a hearing in Sacramento with the California Environmental Health, or EPA, and we found out that secret meetings had occurred before the hearing between them and Monsanto. So now that series of attorneys, including Bobby Kennedy and Michael Baum and associates in LA, are investigating the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, the California EPA, and what's going on between them and Monsanto. So then on June 13th, just a few days ago, the European Parliament started similar investigations. So I say it's going on all over the place. And a lot of new data is going to be released in actually this coming week. So years of apparent corrupt administrative and scientific activities call into question all US EPA glyphosate regulatory decisions, and clearly no decisions should be made on what a safe level is or isn't until that's all sorted out. Glyphosate poses an unreasonable risk of adverse health effects to humans, animals, and the environment. There is no safe level. It should not be in our food supply, water, air, soil, or vaccines. It causes cellular damage wherever it goes. I mean, every day, it's harming each of us, our children, our pets, and the environment. So what can we do about this? Just a couple of last comments, closing comments. One is the flyer that I thought was passed out in the ditty bags. I guess there's a flyer that shows this breast cancer concentration. There's a place on there to send comments. It doesn't matter where you are in the country. Send comments to the California EPA to say, we want glyphosate out of everything. It's very important. We're trying to get 1 million comments because what California does influences the country, influences the world. So it's important. There's 2 sites on that flyer that make it very easy to go and give comments. Also, push increasingly for strict standards on organic foods, USDA organic tilth and Oregon tilth and others. I mean, the question I have is how come the organic growers have to pay a lot of money to be certified, but the people who are producing poisoned foods don't have to pay anything to sell us that food? This is just kind of backwards, I think. We need to push for that change. Also, I say, ask for wherever you go, ask for certified organic food. Demeter Biodynamic is a much higher standard, even the USDA organic. And USDA organic green label is much better than the black label. The black label, don't even eat it. It's 85% organic, you might as well eat conventional. So only go for the green label. Ask your local markets to carry more certified organic food. I mean, for example, will the current takeover of Whole Foods by Amazon improve that sorry place, or will it be more of the same? We hope it improves it. And two products we talked about, Brittany and I talked about, coffee and wine. Go wherever gives you your coffee or wine, wherever you buy it, say we want certified organic. Just put pressure on them. And of course, demand. This is a must. We have to demand that all vaccines be free of contaminants such as glyphosate, aluminum, mercury, and so on. Why should you allow weed killer, a chelating agent for minerals to be used in steam pipes to be injected into your kids? This is just unconscionable. And so, pertaining to Californians, I have a petition, I have a petition that's going to Ben Allen, Henry Stern, and some other senators to push for cleaning up the vaccines as a baseline in California. So any Californians come see me, we'll get you signed up. And thanks for listening, and questions we'll talk about later. Thank you.